Welcome to The Explainer. You see this topic pretty much everywhere, right? From the grocery store aisle to your social media feed. Probiotics. Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and give you a clear, super practical guide.
So, have you ever stood in the supermarket just staring at that giant wall of yogurts and fermented foods and all those supplement bottles and just wondered what any of it actually does? If so, you are definitely not alone. It can be, well, completely overwhelming.
So let's start piecing this whole puzzle together. First things first, what is a probiotic anyway? Okay, let's break down this official-sounding definition. There are two phrases here that are key: live microorganisms and adequate amounts. So these aren't just any old bacteria. They are very specific, living organisms. And you need to have enough of them, the right quantity, for them to actually have a beneficial effect on your body's natural ecosystem.
Now, this is a really critical distinction to get. Probiotics are all about support. They help maintain things that are already working normally, as part of a balanced lifestyle. What they are not is medicine. They're not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any kind of disease. That's a super important point to keep in your back pocket.
To really get how probiotics work, we first have to talk about where they work. And that brings us to the absolutely fascinating world, inside your own gut.
Yep, you heard that right. Trillions with a T. Your gut is basically a whole ecosystem. You can think of it like a bustling city, just packed with different tiny residents. And this community, your microbiota, it plays this huge role in pretty much everything, from how you break down your food to how it interacts with your immune system.
Okay, so if your gut is already full of all this bacteria, what actually happens when you introduce probiotics into the mix? Let's take a look.
So probiotics don't just, move in and take over the whole neighborhood. They interact with the bacteria that are already living there, kind of helping to support the good guys and maintain a nice, balanced environment. And some can even help produce these really beneficial compounds called short-chain fatty acids, which are super important for energy.
You've probably heard people talking about how probiotics can affect your mood or energy levels. Well, this is what they call the gut-brain connection. And while it's an incredibly exciting field of research, it's really important to know that it is still very much developing. The science is super promising, for sure, but we are just scratching the surface.
Okay, listen up, because this next part is maybe the most important section of this entire explainer. Because when it comes to probiotics, the details, they matter a lot.
I'm going to say that one more time just so it really sinks in. Not all probiotics are equal. This is probably the single biggest misconception out there. Thinking all probiotics do the same thing is kind of like thinking all vitamins do the same thing. They just don't.
So, how do we tell them apart? It's actually all in the name. Think of it like a person's full name. It tells you a lot about them. The genus, like Lactobacillus, that's the broad family of bacteria. Then you have the species, like Rhamnosus, which is a specific type within that family. But the most important part is the strain, like GG. That's the unique individual member, and that's the part that really matters.
And this right here is exactly why that three-part name is so critical. The bottom line is this. Just because one specific strain of bacteria has been researched for, let's say, immune support, you absolutely cannot assume that its cousin is going to do the same thing. The benefit is tied directly to that specific strain.
So where do we find these little helpers? Well, you've got two main options. On one hand, you have fantastic fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, and kimchi. They naturally contain live cultures. And on the other hand, you have supplements, which are specifically formulated to deliver certain strains in certain doses.
If you've ever looked at a supplement label, you'll see CFU. That stands for colony-forming units, and it's basically the number of live microorganisms in the product when it was made. But here's the thing, a bigger number is not a guarantee of a better product. What's effective is having the right strain for your needs, not just jamming in the highest count.
So with all this info, what does the actual science say that probiotics can do? Let's take a quick look at the research.
The key word here, again, is support. Research suggests that certain, very specific strains might help with things like digestive comfort and keeping things regular. Some have been studied for the role they play in maintaining immune balance right there in the gut lining. And the others have shown some promise in helping when the gut gets disrupted. Like, for example, helping replenish beneficial bacteria when you're on a course of antibiotics.
Whew, we've covered a ton of ground. So let's pull it all together into a simple playbook you can actually use to make smart choices.
Okay, first, and this is the most important thing, a little safety note.
While probiotics are generally safe for healthy folks, if you have any underlying medical conditions or a compromised immune system, it is absolutely essential that you talk with your doctor before starting any new supplement. Seriously.
All right, let's sum it all up. Remember, probiotics are for support, not a cure. The strain is everything. That's what matters most. You can get them from delicious fermented foods or from supplements, but just know those can vary a lot. And finally, they're not a magic bullet. They work best when they're part of an overall healthy, high-fiber diet that feeds those good bacteria.
And that brings us to the end. We've untangled the puzzle of what probiotics are, how they work, and what to look for. So the final question, that's for you. Armed with all this new knowledge, what does your gut need? Thanks so much for joining us on The Explainer.